Deuteronomy 18 establishes a zero-tolerance policy for the nation of Israel. Interacting with the dead is an act the text describes as detestable to God. This practice is defined as necromancy, the attempt by the living to summon or consult deceased spirits to obtain hidden knowledge. The consequences for this act were terminal. When King Saul secretly sought out a medium at Edor to conjure the spirit of the prophet Samuel, the resulting judgment ended his reign and his life the very next day. Today, this ancient boundary creates a point of intense friction within many modern African Christian communities. Many believers seek to reconcile their faith with cultural traditions, such as consulting sangomas to communicate with ancestors for guidance and protection. This creates a theological crisis, where the believer is caught between an absolute biblical prohibition and a deep-seated cultural reverence for those who have passed on. The primary argument used to bridge this gap is found in a single, high-stakes event in the Gospels. During the Transfiguration, Jesus climbs a mountain with his disciples and is seen holding a conversation with Moses and Elijah. This presents a historical problem. Both Moses and Elijah had finished their earthly lives centuries before Jesus was born. If Jesus is the example for the believer to follow, the question becomes whether this event on the mountain was, by definition, an act of necromancy. The answer to this theological conflict depends entirely on the physical state of the two men standing beside Jesus. A critical distinction exists in the origin of the event. While necromancy is a human-led attempt to pierce the veil, the Transfiguration is a divine revelation initiated by God. The state of the prophets begins with the specific history of Elijah. In 2 Kings chapter 2, Elijah is described walking and speaking with his disciple, Elisha, in a completely normal physical state. Their journey was suddenly interrupted by a chariot and horses of fire that descended from the sky and separated the two men. Elijah was taken into a whirlwind and carried into heaven while still in his physical body. Because Elijah never experienced physical death, he retains what the text considers a license to be on the earth. Jesus was conversing with a living human being who had simply changed locations. The case for Moses is more difficult to navigate, as his history includes a documented death. Deuteronomy chapter 34 is explicit. Moses died in the land of Moab. However, the circumstances following his death were unique. The text records that God himself buried Moses in a secret location that no human has ever found. The Book of Jude later adds a cryptic detail to this burial, describing a cosmic dispute over the remains. The passage describes Michael the archangel battling the devil, specifically for ownership of Moses' corpse. This suggests that the body of Moses was divinely claimed and preserved, held apart from the natural process of earthly decay. By securing the body through an angelic intervention, God maintained Moses' physical form for the specific purpose of this meeting. On the mountain, Jesus spoke with a man whose physical presence was held in a state of living readiness by the same power that originally buried him. Beyond the mechanics of their appearance, the investigation must address why these two specific men were selected for this moment. Moses serves as the ultimate representative of the law, the foundational structure of the biblical covenant. Elijah represents the prophets, the authoritative voice that called the nation back to that covenant. These three pillars illustrate the meeting's purpose, a visual confirmation that Jesus fulfills both the law and the prophets. The presence of the two men signifies a formal passing of the torch, where their individual missions are completed in Jesus. This event functions as a divine confirmation of authority, designed to show the disciples that the ancient requirements of their faith had reached their intended destination. This brings the focus back to the modern practice of using the Transfiguration to justify consulting sangamas or deceased ancestors. When the physical evidence of the text is applied, the comparison between the mountain and ancestral worship collapses. Moses and Elijah appeared as living individuals in unique, glorified physical forms, whereas modern practices target disembodied spirits. The absolute biblical ban on necromancy remains in place because the event on the mountain was a conversation between the living. For the believer, this removes the possibility of using Jesus as a precedent for utilizing mediums or attempting to contact the dead. The biblical boundary stands firm. The living are directed to the Holy Spirit alone, and the barrier between the living and the dead remains closed.